In this video, I'm going to briefly cover some wedding photography styles, how those styles will impact on your day, the pros and cons of those styles, and then at the end of this video, I'll give you some hints and tips on how you can spot a photographer's style. The first thing you should be considering as a couple when it comes to your wedding photography is style and what it is that you want from your wedding photos. There are, in my opinion, 4 distinct types of wedding photography, with some photographers merging between those styles. So let's take a look at what those styles are. So this is a style that probably comes to mind when you think about wedding photography. It's probably the wedding style that your parents had and their parents had as their wedding photography. So this style comes from the film days, when film was relatively expensive to develop, a little bit cumbersome to deal with as well, so people played it safe. You knew what you were getting with traditional wedding photography. You would have a set of family formals that you would take, you would do a set of posed, you would do some smaller groups, of people at the wedding, and that would be it. So let's look at the pros. It's a safe type of photography. You know what you're going to get. You and the photographer often the images are the same from wedding to wedding, so it's been working over the last 20-30 years, and it will continue to be a style that works for a lot of couples. Because it's a wedding style that's been around a long while, your parents and your grandparents, it's the sort of wedding photography that they'll expect to see. So what about cons? So I think this type of photography can lack character, can lack individuality, because it's a very formulaic approach to wedding photography, and it kind of all looks the same. With this style of photography, and because it mainly focuses on the posed style of photography, you will end up on your wedding day spending 2, 3, potentially 4 hours doing photos, doing family formals, doing couples photos. So you'll end up spending a lot of time away from your guests. So the next type of wedding photography, which isn't as popular here in the UK as it is in the States, but it's editorial high fashion. So this style of photography mimics lifestyle magazines, fashion magazines. It's very Hollywood, everything beautifully lit, everything stylized, but it does take time and a lot of lighting. So one of the big pros of this style of wedding photography is how stylized it is. It's going to be impactful. They are going to be absolutely stunning. The small selection of images that you're going to get are going to be beautifully lit, and they're going to look very Hollywood. So let's take a look at the cons. So one of the cons of this style of wedding photography is the time it takes to generate these stylized images. They take a long time because everything has to be perfect, the lighting has to be perfect, the setup has to be perfect, so it does take some time. Often this style of wedding photography is right at the top end in the price bracket. So the next style that we're going to look at is lifestyle, or fake candid as I call it. This style may seem similar to documentary wedding photography, certainly when you are viewing the images, but the photographer will have more involvement and will often direct candid moments. So what do I mean by more involvement? Well, imagine you've got your bridesmaids are ready, they've got their flowers, the hair's done, the makeup's done, they all look absolutely stunning. What the photographer might do is get them to move to, say, the window where the light is much more flattering, and ask them to just joke, just have a laugh, talk to each other, tell some stories about the bride. And then what the photographer will do is move around the bridesmaids whilst they're having this fake moment and capture these things candidly. So what about the pros of lifestyle or fake candid? Images will often look natural, unposed, even if the photographer's had a hand in directing those moments. So another pro of this style is that it will look far more natural than the traditional classical photography style. What about the cons? So I think one of the big cons of this style of wedding photography is the subjects that are part of this fake candid photo are going to remember that moment as being fake because it was the photographer that asked them or told them to do a certain thing. The next style of wedding photography that I'm going to talk about is documentary or photojournalism. So this type of wedding photography is all about documenting your day. It's about telling the true, honest story of what happened on your wedding day. Photographers who shoot in this style don't give directions, don't pose, typically don't get involved at all on your wedding day. And photographers who shoot documentary style have an amazing knack of being able to capture all these moments without you knowing they are there. So what about the pros of documentary wedding photography? For me, the biggest pro of documentary wedding photography is the emotions that you see in these images. Because they are photographed in such a way that these people do not know that a camera is being pointed at them, they let go. The tears flow, the smiles, the hugs, they're all natural. People feel more at ease when they know that they are at a wedding where the photographer is not going to quickly pounce on them and ask them to do a group shot or do something daft. And that's a big thing for your guests. One of the cons of documentary wedding photography is the fact that it's unscripted. A documentary wedding photographer won't work off a shot list. He or she will have in her mind or his mind images that they want to try and capture, but because they are unscripted and they don't interfere, they're not going to force any sort of images to happen. So another downside of documentary wedding photography is that not every image is going to be perfect, because the nature of the style is that the photographer is there to capture the wedding as it happens. So if people are having a moment in a particular area of the venue that's not very well lit and it doesn't look beautiful, to the documentary wedding photographer that doesn't matter, because the moment trumps the light or the composition. So this final bit of the video is about being able to spot a photographer's style. So when you are looking at a photographer's website and they're claiming to be a documentary wedding photographer, how can you tell if they are indeed a documentary wedding photographer, or they're a lifestyle photographer, or they are a classical wedding photographer but claiming to be something else? Now, when you start looking at websites, you need to be very aware of what the photographer is showing you. If a photographer is claiming, let's say, to be a documentary wedding photographer but are showing lots of posed pictures, lots of formals, lots of couples pictures, where it looks like it's been faked, then you know that they are going to be a little bit more hands-on at your wedding. If you go on a photographer's website and everything looks natural, everything looks candid, nothing looks posed, they are a documentary wedding photographer. If you go on a website where it is all posed and they claim to be posed, you know that they're a traditional wedding photographer. So hopefully when you look at the images now, it all makes a little bit of sense, because if you book someone based on a few images and a claim to be something, what might happen on the wedding day might be completely different.